Alrighty, I think we are live. Welcome aboard to stream number 2 on owncast.eom.dev. My name is Eric, and I'll take this opportunity at the beginning to remind you all that the live stream chat is hosted on Matrix. Feel free to log into a public server of your choosing and join the Matrix chat. I will be paying attention to this during the stream, and actually I kind of keep it open 24/7, so that's your way of talking to me. So I got a couple of comments on the last live stream. I'm going to assume that if you have posted a public comment on a public YouTube channel, that you are not going to mind me sharing that comment in this live stream now. Make it a little bigger so we can all read it. And let's take a look. So first one is from Maxime Seguin. You enjoyed the tutorial, I see. The volume of my voice was way too low. I have addressed that. I did not know that going into reading your comment, but I know that now. I have addressed it. It seems like it's better, maybe even a little bit too loud. So if that's the case, then feel free to let me know still. Thank you for the comment. Also, I am a little bit stressed. I don't mind telling you. I have a live stream going, and actually, the first few times I tried to run the live stream, I ran into some technical difficulties. So there is kind of in the back of my mind a question as to whether or not I'm still having technical difficulties. I can see that I am. I have the microphone a little bit too loud, I think. I'm going to tang it down one notch. Okay. So I will try to slow down. That being said, a lot of what I'm showing here is pretty complicated, and the goal is kind of participation. So if you tune into the streams often and follow along with what I'm doing, hopefully you should get a lot more enjoyment and educational value out of the content. There's so much context that it kind of just needs to be shown over time. So that's kind of what I'm going for. But thank you. I will try to slow down. The next one came from Abhishek Patek. Asking for more information on the description or in a comment. And actually, I got a comment on Reddit as well that echoed this request. Yes, as I said in the comment, yes, I can do that. I will do that. And I have not yet done it on the video that I uploaded last week. Haven't really had an opportunity to do that. And maybe I will not going forward. We'll see. I'm hoping to do these at somewhat of a rate at which I would want to probably just move on to the next one and improve the next one rather than going back and editing old ones. But to address that, I have created this little notepad text here. It is storing just some notes as we go, and I'm putting some timestamps in there so that I can more easily upload that alongside the video. And that does kind of lead me into what I want to show you today, which is a few things that I have been working on since the last video. Reading these comments, it became abundantly clear to me how useful it is to get feedback like this, so I deployed another service, Discourse, if you are familiar with it. Let me make this a bit bigger for everyone. It's basically a forum. A pretty fancy modern forum. This is my view because I'm an administrator. You are welcome to join this forum. I just deployed this yesterday, so if you try to log in and there's a problem, give it a little bit of time because it's very new. But you are welcome to join this forum, and I am at the very least going to post each live stream alongside the description here for discussions. And if you post comments here, I will be very likely to engage with those comments. They can be about the live stream or basically about anything else you would like. So feel free to go to discourse.eom.dev, and you can sign in with Google. I have put a fair amount of thought into, let me show you that. I've put a fair amount of thought into how to manage accounts on this network, both for myself, for administrative users, for service accounts, people I know, and then you, the audience. And I am thinking the easiest way for you to gain access to my services is to just be able to sign in with Google or sign in with GitHub. This is done using the OAuth 2 client. I can show you how that's set up at some point, maybe even today. But basically, you should be able, if you have a YouTube account, you should be able to just sign in with Google and be able to log into this Discord account. And the same thing actually exists over on Gitea. You can sign in with Google and GitHub. Make that nice and big for you. Again, both done with OAuth clients, and this is going to kind of make it easier for you to gain access to some of these things. You should be able to just connect your GitHub account to leave issues or pull requests on my server. I thought that would be the best way to make it so that you could maintain ownership over the stuff that you do on my server, if that makes any sense. It would be tied to an identity that you are already managing. And the reason that I want to do that is because a lot of these services are using something called the Fediverse. If you're not familiar with the Fediverse, let me get out of this private window. Specifically, sorry, I'm new to navigating here. I am using ActivityPub down here. Not much to see on the ActivityPub settings screen for Discourse. There we go. So if you are familiar with ActivityPub, then what I am going for here are self-hosted services that are connected to other people's services. If you are not familiar with ActivityPub, allow me to digress as we take a look at the Fediverse. This is a wiki called Join the Fediverse. I'm going to copy the link to it into my handy dandy text pad of descriptions. And we should probably mark a timestamp at this point. We are at 07:22, and we're going to talk about the Fediverse. Isn't this easier for creating descriptions on videos? Wonderful. So, the Fediverse. The typical analogy for the Fediverse is email. So, you can have an account on Gmail, you can have an account on Yahoo. Yahoo's kind of old. Hotmail, whatever other email services exist besides Google at this point, I don't really know. You can host your own email server. I host my own here. I didn't show it last time, but it is in the background. And any email server can talk to any other email server. You know, a Gmail account can email a Yahoo account and vice versa. And so the Fediverse is intended to work like that for social networks. It originated with Mastodon, I believe, and I think a lot of people are going to be familiar with Mastodon. But there are other things on it as well. There was a very good diagram that I always liked, Fediverse projects. There are a few different protocols and a lot of different services that are running the Fediverse. In particular, we want to look at this yellow blob here. This is what I'm using on my network. Discourse is posting to the Fediverse, and I will show more things that are posting to the Fediverse later. Actually, Owncast can post to the Fediverse. So the idea is that you can have an account on any server running one of these services, and you can follow an account on any server running any of these services. So if you have a Mastodon account on, what's their main thing, mastodon.social, then from that account, you can follow accounts on someone else's Mastodon instance. So I'm not hosting Mastodon, but if I were, it would be at mastodon.eom.dev, and your mastodon.social account would be able to follow my mastodon.eom.dev account. And I think they also have some things on there for moving your account between different servers. Not sure about that, but that might exist. So, as we can see, all of these different types of services, so Funk Whale, I'm not really sure what that is, Mastodon, Pleroma, I don't know what that is. I don't know what a lot of these are. Lemmy, that one's easy to say. We'll use Lemmy as our example from now on. So we can post from any of these services to the ActivityPub protocol, and someone on any of these clients can read it. I hope that was clear. I believe it was this time. So Discourse is posting to ActivityPub. So when I post a video, I will continue uploading it to YouTube because that's where people are interacting right now. But hopefully I would be able to post it to an a Discourse thread for discussion, and that would automatically propagate out to ActivityPub. And if you have an ActivityPub account or server, then this is a way that we can interact. But, we'll have to get to that later. In addition to Discourse, I also deployed WordPress. Similar story here. WordPress actually it is very different from Discourse, but the way I am thinking of using it actually isn't. WordPress can also publish to ActivityPub. So as we can see, here's a good example of two different services posting to the same protocol. And so my WordPress account would be able to follow my Discourse account and vice versa, though that wouldn't be the most useful use case. Anyway, so WordPress would be, I upload this video, I can add a description and any of the comments that we end up putting in our little document here, and that all becomes a blog post. Again, discussion on Discourse. All of this gets propagated out to ActivityPub so that it can be interacted with on social networks. So that's the idea so far, and we need to automate this some. But I think that's about all I wanted to show for these new services. And I'm going to take a sip of water and write down our next chapter. It's frozen. I think I'm moving a bit fast again. So, these are the new services. Again, please go ahead and try to log in if you feel so inclined. Give them a test. If you deploy it yourself, then we can interact that way as well. The idea here is, again, I think I said this, but self-hosted services that can interact with other people who are self-hosting services. So if you learn how to do this, I would certainly like to know about it so that we can federate our servers. That would be very cool, I think. Anyway, let's hop back over to Gitea. At the end of my last video, I was talking about this project here, my Kraken bot. And the first thing I want to show you is a bit about using projects and milestones in Gitea and GitHub, which will be the name of our next chapter. 1339. What did I just say it was? Okay, so I said at the end of the last video that I wasn't quite sure how these projects and milestones worked, and I have since explored and found out a bit more about how they work. So let's start with projects. Projects can exist at the organization level or at the repository level. So I have one project in here, and this contains both repositories. It's at the level of this organization. If I go into one of these repositories, we can see that there are no projects, even though it's part of the one that is in the organization. So that's a thing. Projects can include issues or pull requests that are in multiple repositories. I've created one here, and if we open it up, now I had to create these columns myself. They do not come by default. I don't think there are any that come by default, if I remember that correctly. But this is basically just a Kanban board. If you are familiar with that workflow, you've probably worked in a software engineering job. But this is generally how the tasks will be organized. And I created this and populated it with several of the issues that I needed to work on in order to get this project up and running. But I'm not sure that this is the most useful thing for me to be using. So as we can see, I'm assigned to all of these. I am the only person working on this at the moment. So it doesn't really make a lot of sense for me to be organizing things like this. It's a bit tedious for me to have to drag and move things around. It can be useful for me to see that something is blocked, but other than that, not really. And especially this in review column, review by whom? It's not clear. So this, I made it for testing purposes and demo purposes, but I'm not sure I'm going to be using it much going forward. If I end up having participation from my lovely audience here, then perhaps this would be more useful. Also, if you are using this in a setting in which there are a lot of people, then a project would be great. And I think this translates pretty one-to-one to GitHub projects and Milestones as well. So if you're doing the same thing but on GitHub, it's basically the same. More useful to me, if we go back here, are Milestones. And Milestones exist only at the level of the repository. So in this one, for the Kraken bot, I can open my issues, I can see a milestone, and it's really just another way of organizing issues. The exact same issues and pull requests are shown here. It just kind of shows some data about how close we are to completion, how much time has been spent on it, what's left to do, what has been done, and yeah, so I have organized a minor plan for how to get this Kraken bot up and running. I can see that my audio is still a little bit too loud, I think. I'm seeing that it's too loud. You can tell me otherwise, but I'm going to knock it down one more notch. Anyway, I've set up a basic roadmap for how I want to get this thing up and running, and it's largely ready to go. I had it running previously, but there are some adjustments that I want to make before I actually deploy it again. Let's take a look at what it actually is first. The Kraken bot. If you're not familiar with Kraken, let's go ahead and take a look. Kraken is an API for algorithmically, or not even necessarily algorithmically, you can do it manually. It's for trading cryptocurrencies. What's the problem here? Oh, it's pro.kraken.something. Yeah, there it is. I don't think I'm logged in. Here we go. Yeah, look at all that. What's it showing us here? Tremp USD. Not that one. Let's look at a different one. That one's kind of funny though. Let's look at Bitcoin. There we go. So this is Kraken, and it is showing you exchange rates between cryptocurrencies. In this case, the exchange rate of Bitcoin to US dollar. It's currently selling for over $100,000, which is pretty wild. I don't really have any Bitcoin, so that's not great news for me. But anyway, what's cool about this, aside from a lot of things, is that we can interact with it over an API. So are the docs readily available here? No. It doesn't matter. But we can tell a computer program, Python, essentially, to interact with this market and execute real trades for real money, which is dangerous. I'm not saying that you should do this with your hard-earned money. I'm doing this for fun as an example, as I've said. I do kind of hope it makes money, so I'm not gonna lie about that. But I'm not recommending that you put your life savings on any cryptocurrency, anything. Don't do that. But we're going to do it here. So the idea is that we have Python interacting with that API so that we can algorithmically day trade cryptocurrencies based on what's happening in the market. If we look at app.py, it'll show us. It's pretty simple right now. This is actually a little bit old. When did I make this? Okay, 5 days ago is when I did the revert, but I don't know when I actually made the thing. Yeah, like several months ago is when I was actually last working on this. But let's take a look. App.py. It's pretty simple. This is intended to run in Kubernetes, so it is designed with Kubernetes in mind. As such, this app.py executes as the main program, and it executes once. You run this script, it executes once. And it has two steps. It updates, and then it executes. The update is going to go to the Kraken API and collect all our data and process it using a model. In this case, I created a linear regression model. After we have collected and processed our data, we are going to execute a trading strategy. In this case, the strategy is high-low cutoff. Let's take a look at each of those separately. So again, this is on gitea.eom.dev, so let's go ahead and copy that link. Man, this is great. This idea of a text document for a description, genius. And let's put a chapter in. This is awesome. Kraken bot. Cool. Okay. I'm really glad I thought of that. What was Maxime? Thank you for the suggestion. Again, that was very helpful. Cool. So the Kraken bot. Yes, we want to look at the trading strategy, and we want to look at the model. It's not super interesting to look at these abstract base classes. If you're not familiar with an abstract base class, it lets you define a template, the platonic solid of your class. So it says what variables it has, it says what methods it has, but it doesn't actually implement them. So in our original app.py, what I'm telling, the way this is laid out, we can see it is using a model, it's using a strategy, and it is executing it on a bot. So I have these abstract base classes for a trading strategy and a model. Themselves, they don't contain much, but they are used by the downstream child classes to implement things. Provides a consistent interface for data structures. Let's see. So let's first look at linear regression. What this is doing, I will mildly have to remind myself because this was 5 months ago. But essentially, what we are going to do, I don't know how obvious it's going to be. I'm trying to find the part where it hits the Kraken API. Might not be so obvious. Let me skip over that part. I'll show that in a second. What's happening here is that for every single exchange that is available on the Kraken API, and we can see there are tons of them, I have filtered it out so that it is only comparing the ones that are showing me the price relative to US dollar, because I'm in America. So I filter these for markets that are comparing to the value to USD, and then for every single one of those markets, I get the open, high, low, close data for a given time period. I believe that's passed in somewhere. Doesn't matter. So for a given time period, I get the open, high, low, close data for every single one of those markets, and then I simply calculate a linear regression, which is a little bit easier to see. You can dig through these on your own. Looking through code is going to be way better if you actually go on the Git server and look at it rather than a YouTube video. So I don't mind kind of hopping around here. But anyway, for each one of those markets, we calculate a linear regression model, and then, quite simply, that goes over to our high-low cutoff, and we are going to move our investment to the best performing market. Very, very simple, not a very smart strategy. There is some intelligence here, thankfully. I set a target gain and a max loss. The number of investments you want to manage at a time, so like we can say like invest on 5 different markets at a time, and I can set how much I want to invest on each one of those markets. And then the target gain and max loss, that's where it's a little bit smarter than just putting everything on whoever did best last. What this is saying is that, if we make an investment at, let's say, $100, we want to gain a certain amount, or we are willing to lose another amount. And we can play with those values to play with the statistics of how profitable this thing could be. So if we imagine that this was a coin flip, pure 50-50 chance, then we could say, I want to gain $10 or lose $5. And if it's 50-50, then that bet is going to be profitable over time. So this is not 50-50. So this is not necessarily the smartest strategy. It's not a guarantee to do this. But it is a way of saying, for every single investment that I make, I want to sell either when I have gained this certain amount or I have lost this certain amount. And we're going to invest on whoever did best last is the idea. Okay, again, the actual strategy I'm using here is not necessarily the best. I'm not recommending that you download this and put your life savings on it. Don't do that. And if you do, it's not my fault. Don't sue me. So, what's more interesting about this is the way that it integrates with Kubernetes. So again, if we look at our app.py, this is a one-shot execution. We update, we get all of the data from Kraken, we process it as a linear regression, and then we execute any trades that we need to execute to bail out of any bad investments, cash out on any good ones, and then invest our money again into whoever did best last. It's going to happen once, and then it's going to die. And the way that that works with Kubernetes is with something called a cron job. Cron job. That's what this is. A cron job, if you're familiar with Linux, you're probably familiar with cron. It allows you to execute tasks on a given schedule. And this Kubernetes cron job is basically the same. It will allow me to create a specific pod on a schedule. In this case, the pod is the Docker container that is created from the Kraken bot repository. So this creates a Docker container out of the Python script, and then this, on a schedule, is going to deploy that container to my Kubernetes cluster, execute the script within, and die. And what's useful about that setup is that it allows for something called continuous integration. So if we look at my YAML here, I need another sip of water. The ice is like creating a cap that like plugs it from like giving me water. It's unfortunate. Okay, so continuous integration. What we say in this cron job definition in our job template here, we're going to create a container, and it is going to run this image. At the moment, I'm just pushing this to Docker Hub, but in the future, I'll probably want to host this myself as well. And we give it the image pull policy of always. And so what this means is that every single time the cron job runs, it's going to pull the latest version of the image, regardless of whether or not it has that image stored locally. And this allows me to push updates to my Kraken bot here. I push a update to the Kraken bot, build the new Docker container, push that to Docker Hub, and then the next time my cron tab executes, it will just pull down the latest version. I don't have to redeploy anything. I don't have to change anything. It's just going to get the latest version of the code right out the gate. And that's kind of the most continuous integration automation that I have set up so far. It's pretty minimal. In the future, though, I can use Gitea actions to create a workflow. And this would allow me to say, whenever new code is merged into the main branch, I want to build a Docker container. And then that Docker container should be pushed to wherever I'm storing my artifacts. I think packages maybe. I'm not sure if there's a good place on Gitea or if I should put it on min.io for that, but I'll see in the future. Anyway, we build the new version of the Docker image, we push the new version of the Docker image, and then the cron tab will pull it down the next time it runs. So it makes it pretty easy to push updates to this algorithm. If I want to increase the number of investments that I'm making on each run, or if I want to change the amount that I am going to be investing on a given run, as I showed, the investment count, the investment volume, those are all variables. So I can just push very small changes. Actually, those that was a terrible example. And if you see why, then bonus points. But the reason it's a bad example is that our those values, those specific values that I just highlighted, are set as environment variables in the cron job. So in fact, I would need to redeploy the cron job if I wanted to change those specific values. But if I change the algorithm it's using, if I deploy a totally new algorithm where I have written changes in the actual Kraken bot, at that point, those get pushed up automatically. And potentially, I could, in the Ansible role for Kraken bot, we could create a action that, when this receives updates, publish it to Kubernetes. I might end up running into some issues because this Gitea instance is running on Kubernetes, so that could potentially not be a great idea, but it's possible. Okay, so I think that about covers what I wanted to show in this stream. This one's going to be a bit shorter than the last one. Again, I am hoping for my lovely audience here to join me on services such as Discourse and Matrix and the other ones that I have shown here, Gitea. Hopefully, by self-hosting things, if you self-host your stuff, I self-host my stuff, then we can all interact with each other's stuff over the Fediverse. So I hope to see you there. Thank you for joining me, and I will see you next time. Toodaloo.